Today on Network Africa, the heckling of South Africa's #1 citizen gets EFF MPs thrown out. We have the latest from Johannesburg. Then Médecins Sans Frontières have some harsh words for the United Nations regarding hospital attacks. And later, after spending 6 days caught under the rubble brought about by the building collapse in Kenya, a woman finally breathes free. Welcome to the program. I am Amarachi Ubani. It's no surprise a brawl broke out in the South African Parliament yesterday after security officers were ordered to forcibly remove opposition MPs from the chamber. Several punches were thrown as members of the left-wing economic freedom fighters were expelled for heckling President Jacob Zuma. It was President Zuma's first appearance in Parliament since 2 damning court rulings against him. This comes almost a week after a court said that Mr. Zuma should be charged with corruption. The case is related to a multi-billion-dollar arms deal the government negotiated in 1999. In his defense, Zuma denies any wrongdoing and says he will remain president. A CEO of Junto Media, Lucas Malloy, joins us now for more on this development. Lucas, thank you for joining us on Network Africa. President Jacob Zuma's term is due to end in 2019, but with all these attacks from the opposition, how realistic is that?
Good day, Cynthia, and good day to your listeners.
Well, Lucas, I already asked my first question, and it's Amarachi, actually. Cynthia is behind the scenes today. President Zuma's term ends in 2019. With all the attacks, will he make it to that date?
I think it's to that date. It's a question that I suppose tends to the ruling party. As things are standing, I can tell you that with a lot of citizens and they're not having separate sanctions. But then remember, the decision now lies with the party, which is in control at the moment, the ANC. And as you know, the president, directly before President was recalled, and that is not the scenario that the ANC would like to see themselves going through again. So I suppose, as things stand, unless they stick move.
We do seem to be having problems with Lucas. We'll try to reconnect with him and get back to him for more on the parliamentary brawl that happened yesterday in South Africa. Away from the country, some issues with the United Nations. The UN, the head of Doctors Without Borders, chastised 4 of 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council over the deaths of medical personnel in conflict zones. Our next report tells us more about this.
After the adoption of a Security Council resolution on May 3rd condemning attacks on healthcare workers and facilities during conflict, the permanent representative of Egypt, one of the sponsors of the resolution, says such attacks are unacceptable and will not be tolerated.
Resolution 6.2. First, send a strong and clear message from the Security Council that attacks targeting hospital and medical workers are unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Demand that all parties to armed conflicts comply fully with their international law obligations, including international humanitarian law.
The 15-man council unanimously adopted a resolution reminding states that under international law, they must protect medical and aid workers, but the text does not impose any new obligations and does not single out any conflicts.
4 of the 5 permanent members of this council have, to varying degrees, been associated with coalition responsible for attacks on health structure over the last year. These include the NATO-led coalition in Afghanistan, the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen, the Russia-backed Syrian-led coalition.
More than 50 people were killed last week in an attack on a hospital in Syria's northern city of Aleppo, which UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said, by all accounts, was carried out by the Syrian government.
All too often, attacks on health facilities and medical workers are not just isolated or incidental battlefield fallout, but rather the intended objective of the combatants. This is shameful and inexcusable.
The UN resolution strongly condemns the prevailing impunity for violations and abuses committed against medical personnel and humanitarian personnel, as well as hospitals and other medical facilities in armed conflict. Peter Mora, president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, describes the UN resolution as a momentous step in the international community's effort to draw attention to a problem that is now observed as a sheer frequency of occurrence.
Well, back to Lucas Malloy, who is in Johannesburg. He joins us via telephone. Lucas, thank you for staying with us. First of all, tell us more about that brawl yesterday. Why were the lawmakers angered by President Zuma's presence?
Yesterday, the thing is that with the oppositional parties, they have made their stance clear when it comes to President Zuma. And their stance are that the president does not have credibility and they are not willing to listen to the president speak as he doesn't have credibility to them. So the lawmakers are on a point where they have decided that until the president is removed, they will not participate in parliamentary discussions. We saw today that they have boycotted today going out and listening to the president's speech today. They have boycotted completely today and refrained from participating in such. So their stance are very clear that they do not recognize the president. The president has flouted the constitution and that, and he has got charges that probably will be reinstated, and they are not willing to listen to him because they do not believe in him anymore.
Lucas, if you say the lawmakers boycotted the meeting today, how long can they keep up with this? And is there any penalty for them for being away from Parliament?
Sure. I would not be very sure about the rules when it comes to that stance and that. But as things happen, you remember that the EFF itself has been banned from or suspended from the sittings for a week because they were then taken out or thrown out of Parliament of the sitting yesterday. So with them, they are still suspended today. The DA, however, COPE, the Freedom Front, and the rest of the others, UDM and those, have them refrained from going there. Does it make much difference? And that is what is being debated, because as we know that the ANC still holds the third majority in Parliament and that. So we may even not be able to recognize that the opposition parties are not in Parliament, but that is the stance that they have taken, and they have said that until the president steps down, they are not going to listen to him.
It seems President Jacob Zuma is a cat with 9 lives. I mean, all the impeachment proceedings against him, the call for him to step down, all the allegations of corruption and bribery and cronyism against him and so on. He seems to have surmounted every one of them, and yet his tenure is supposed to end in 2019. You think he'll make it to that date?
There is a lot of pressure for the president to step down from normal civilians, The ANC itself seems to be divided on whether the president should stay or go. So I can tell you that the majority, both looking at putting together maybe the disgruntled members of the ANC and the population in general, the majority is that President Zuma needs to step down. I really don't see him finishing the term. If President Zuma stays as a president, the ANC will be risking losing a lot of votes. And that will then become evident on the August 3rd election, where people will not vote for the ANC as long as President Zuma is the president of the party. And this is what the people are saying. So if he stays up until 2019, we can probably be guaranteed that the ANC will not be the governing party in 2019. So they are going to have to make a choice in being the governing party or keeping their president.
So despite all of the fighting and all the brawl that happened yesterday, the president was able to finish his speech. What did he say to Parliament?
A lot of issues that are coming in. It's things that we have heard over and over, the promises that are being said over and over, job creation, growing the economy, we hearing such, and up until this stage, these are things that have not materialized in the eyes of ordinary citizens of South Africa. So the president has really just stamped on the things that he had been saying on his State of the Nation address. It's really just going back and cementing on those things. And there isn't much reporting that is going on in terms of how has the government been able to deliver on those promises that they have made. One other issue that he spoke about, which I would like to single out, is the issue of the schools that are being burned down in Vuwani. And he promised that the perpetrators will be brought to book on those schools. Now, he said this, there was only about 17 or 19 schools that were banned, and today we are sitting on 22 schools that were banned. So I don't know if that made any of a difference, or if people even respect what he said as the president at the moment.
Lucas, thank you so much for joining us in Network Africa, and we do hope things return to normal in South Africa. Thanks for joining us on the program. Now, when Network Africa returns after spending 6 days caught under the rubble, brought about by a building collapse in Kenya, a woman finally breathes the air of freedom. Please join us again.